Good evening. My name is Stephen Polos, and I will be giving a presentation on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is also known as the Trash Island. Trash Island has been talked quite a bit about in the media in recent years, and it is a big problem, but probably not in the ways that you're thinking. Trash Island itself actually is not a gigantic island twice the size of Texas that is floating around the middle of the ocean, but rather is an area the size of Texas where it is filled with plastic and is kind of like a plastic smog. As I go on through this presentation, I hope to kind of illuminate some truths about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, where it kind of comes from, how it works, how long plastic stays there, and a variety of other questions to kind of give you the rundown on what exactly it is. Now, the plastic in the GPGP, or the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, comes from two main sources, one of which being on-land pollution and the other being oversea pollution. On-land pollution making up the majority, which just comes from plastic being littered on land and making its way into the water, while oversea makes up the minority of the pollution, either being cargo that drops into the water, plastics that are left in the water, and things like fishing nets. Fishing nets actually making up the majority of the lesser portion of the pollution, or of water pollution, of overwater pollution. The total amount of garbage that actually makes its way into the ocean, it measures about 80,000 tons that goes into the GPGP, and it is these, and how these plastics get there is that once they're either in the water, they get swept away by currents until they eventually reach a current called a gyre. And this gyre that we are talking about is a gyre that runs roughly from the Californian coast to the Japanese coast. What happens to these plastics along the way essentially is that the bigger plastics are broken down into smaller plastics called microplastics. These microplastics are about the size that you see on this person's fingers, or they can get down to very small, minute particles that just don't break down, however. Now, these plastics may not seem like they cause that big of an issue, but in large amounts they do. And even more so is that they can sometimes confuse fish and wildlife, which we'll be discussing in just a moment. Now, the plastic that makes up the GPGP actually takes a long time to break down. A couple of examples are things like soda bottles, which take anywhere between almost half a century to a complete century. No. Half a millennia to a whole millennia. A plastic grocery bag, which takes 10 to 100 years, or a detergent bottle, which takes 500 to 1,000 years. These only being a couple of the plastics that you see in the ocean, but these are basically how long it takes plastics to break down. They can't become waterlogged easily like metals and wood can, so it takes a really long time for them to break down and actually be reincorporated back into the environment properly. Now, some of the negative effects you might want to know about is the effect it's having on marine life and human life. Birds often mistake bottle caps for fish they see floating in the water and picking them up and eating it as food, or giving it to their chicks as food. Plastic can be found oftentimes in the skeletons of these corpses of these birds, and it's honestly not too pretty. Or you can look at the example on the right instead and see that fish sometimes mistake these plastic pieces for fish that they see floating in the ocean, and it can cause them lots of pain. And beyond that, actually, is that although these two are being affected, you may be wondering, well, okay, how does this affect me? Well, you may be more surprised because these plastics aren't always this big. It may be even smaller, like I discussed earlier. If the fish can sometimes eat smaller microplastics that just can't be caught, and fish with microplastics may end up on your dinner plate if you so do this, or if you so were to purchase a fish and that was caught, that may have somehow ended up with this plastic in its system through a series of either it eating a smaller creature with it, or it may have ended up eating it itself as it was swimming. Now, you may be wondering how we can prevent this. The easiest way to prevent this is to, or solve this rather, is prevention. What you can do is you can start recycling, consume less plastic products, kind of use reusable things rather than trying to buy disposable water each time. Instead, just buy one water bottle that you can continue to refill. Or you can start cleaning up beaches and prevent plastic from even getting into the ocean. Current things are being done to help this. Help the ocean to be cleaned up. However, the best way to prevent it from getting any worse is simply to take actions to make sure extra plastic doesn't get into the ocean. I hope this has been informative enough. I apologize if my speech is a little bit stuttered. I'm not always the great at speaking when I'm presenting, but I hope I gave you a good idea about what you need, about what the GPGP is all about, how it formed, and what we can do to kind of help solve it. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.